The Great Old One Deluxe Edition has 2 to 6 players trying to link story cards from the H.P. Lovecraft mythos. Dan Chris Games provided this copy in exchange for an honest review. Shuffle the deck and place 3 story cards face up in the middle. Deal 9 cards to each player. At this time, everyone can play matched or linked pairs, which I'll explain. Most of the cards in this game are story cards, meaning they are characters or things from Lovecraft stories. If you're ever curious, the name of the story is at the bottom of the card. Anyhow, a matched pair is a story card with the same name. Tushem Nigguraths, for example. A linked pair is when story cards mention the other. The Great Race of Yith mentions Nathaniel Wingate Peaslee, and Nathaniel Wingate Peaslee mentions the Great Race of Yith. Horror cards list the Lovecraft story at the top and have an effect that, at least according to my dad, mostly makes thematic sense. These are game-changing, and sometimes even game-breaking, and make the game as chaotic as you would expect a Lovecraftian game to be. Before I explain how to play, there are 3 other card types. Elder Signs negate any horror cards, even ones played during another player's turn. There are a few of these in the deck. There is only a single Cultist and Great Old One card. If you play a Cultist, it's worth -1 point at the end. If you have the Great Old One in your hand at the end, you are devoured and immediately lose. Good job. The others score their points as normal. There is a trick. If you played a Cultist and have the Great Old One in your hand at the end, you succeeded in bringing about the end of the world. In other words, you immediately win. The Great Old One cannot be played or discarded, but there are other ways. At any point during your turn, including at the end of the horror phase, you may play as many story pairs as you can. When you play a pair, you may take the matching horror card from any play area into your hand. Here are the 4 phases. Phase 1, draw a card. Phase 2, choose a player, then ask, like Go Fish, for a specific story card. If they have it, they must give it to you. If they don't, then you may choose and take a card at random. Phase 3, draw a card or swap a story card from your hand with one of the 3 in the center. Phase 4, play 1 horror or cultist card. Once someone has played 7 pairs, the game ends. Check to see if anyone has the Cultist/Great Old One combo. If not, add up your scores. Cultists are worth -1 point. Horror cards and linked pairs are worth 1 point. Matched pairs are worth 2 points. And a 4-card set of matching and linked pairs is worth 4 points. Play cards to help yourself and hurt your opponents, and make 7 pairs. That's Cthulhu, the Great Old One Deluxe Edition. Cthulhu, the Great Old One Deluxe Edition is a weeknight game. You'll need only 30 to 40 minutes to play this one. You'd need a really large coffee table to fit more than 2 people. Player areas grow during the game, plus you have the central piles. I think most groups should stick to the dining table. There is a lot of reading here, probably grade 3, but no math aside from scoring. The theme and art, while not really gory or gruesome, might be too much for some kids. Possibly some adults, too. As for the gameplay, you'll be remembering who is what, and deducing and playing horror cards at the right time. This could be difficult or even overwhelming, especially at higher player counts. I'd say that if they can handle the theme, an experienced 8 and up gamer might be fine. In our 4th game of Cthulhu, the Great Old One Deluxe Edition, I taught Grandma how to play. Mom started with a pair, and I quickly followed. Not long into our game, me, Mom, and Grandma all had 3 or 4 pairs, and Dad had nothing. Some horror cards and deduction later, and he was back in the game. Suddenly, any of us could have won on points, but either because we couldn't or didn't want to, nobody triggered the end. Grandma played a cultist, so we knew what other cards she had. I didn't want her to win, so I played the silver key, which allowed me to look at her hand, then take a card. I naturally grabbed the Great Old One. Why put myself at risk? Well, I know she would end the game when it was her turn again. I hoped nobody would trigger the end so I could play the Diary of Alonzo Typer and steal her cultist. Unfortunately, Grandma did have some valuable pairs, so she triggered the endgame regardless. I, of course, lost immediately. Mom had 8 points, Grandma had 12, and Dad had 16. It was a really exciting game. Cluedo, the Great Old One Deluxe Edition has cool and creepy art. The cards are colored by type, but have different symbols and borders to help people who are colorblind. I do wish there was an identifier in the corners though. Small hands may have trouble holding lots of cards, and moving them around just to see the name and/or story can be tricky. You'll pretty much never be stuck on a turn. With multiple opportunities to draw, it's likely you'll get a pair or a horror card within a turn or two. Because of those horror cards, there's very little downtime because things could happen at any time. If no horror cards are played, you can still go through your cards to figure out what you'll want to ask for or what you may want to swap. There's a lot of interaction here. Those horror cards can really stick it to people, especially if you have a strong memory so you can remember who has what. Pay attention to what's asked around the table, then ask for cards to break up their pairs. It's nasty, nasty fun. Speaking of pairs, I'm glad that you can make different sets of them. It helps mitigate bad luck during draws. I've only played this with 3 and 4 people. While it's fun with 3, it's better with 4 because of all the reasons I listed. I wonder if there would be too much chaos with 5 and 6 people. Cluedo, the Great Old One Deluxe Edition replaces Lovecraft Letter for me. While that game has better bluffing and some push your luck, this game has more player choices, better deduction, and has more ways to win. Neither are super thematic, but Lovecraft Letter does that a bit better too. It doesn't really matter though, because when it comes down to which game I'd rather play, this is the one I'd pick.